Hey, I'm Shelly, a data scientist by day and a digital creator by night. Aside from my regular content on travel, data, or life, I enjoy breaking down any process. And this was very prominent when me and my husband were planning our destination wedding. Therefore, this series breaks down what I think are the top 3 processes you need to lock down to have a successful event. Welcome to episode 1, Steps Needed to Have a Catholic Marriage in Mexico from a Canadian Perspective. Hi everyone, it's Shelly and welcome back to my channel. The main gist in this story is that there's 2 different components in making sure that your marriage is recognized by the Canadian government, your legal marriage, but also that you are set up and equipped to having your marriage in a church down in Mexico. And so what you have to do in this situation is get a marriage transfer. Essentially, it is the formal documentation your local church is approving to have your sacrament of marriage in a church down in Mexico. And then there's a few different documents that you have to obtain in order for you to do the full marriage transfer. You're going to have 4 different documents in place. Your baptism records that have a current date on it, your marriage preparation class certificate, marriage certificate, and then your confirmation certificates. So the first document that we'll talk about is the baptism records. This one is going to be a little bit interesting, especially if you were not baptized in Canada. In my case, I was baptized in Canada. All my documents were in Canada, and it was pretty easy to get a current dated baptism record from that. And the main thing that they're looking at in this baptism record is there is a notation if you did get married before. So they need something that is current and to date, that signifying if you did get married or not. In my case, I did not get married beforehand, so the notation was just, I think it was blank or something like that. In the case of my spouse's documentation, he got baptized Philippines. And so we had to go through this whole process of confirming his identity because we were international, like we weren't able to go to Philippines itself. That is like the one case, for my sister and her husband, he had to actually go to Philippines to confirm his identity to get his baptism record. My advice here is to reach out to that parish and ensure that you understand whether you can do it digitally or if you have to actually be physically there to get a new baptism record at a current date. The second documentation is your marriage preparation certificate. So in my parish, they host monthly marriage preparation classes, and so all you really have to do is sign up to one of those. How my parish does it is that they do a 3-day or a 2-day seminar, and then you'll have multiple different couples that come to this marriage preparation class, but they go through things like finances, relationship with God, how you communicate with each other, and also how you were raised up, understanding each other's values and love language. Those also come into conversation. And so you'll go through that marriage preparation class over 1 weekend, and you would get your certificate just a week after. So that one is pretty easy to do. Just make sure that you have a reserved placement in one of their monthly classes, and then you're good to go. I would recommend having these marriage preparation classes before you get to the next step or the next document in the process, which is your marriage certificate. This is essentially you getting legally married in Canada. So what I did was we organized a date with commissioner, and she literally did the legal marriage here in the house just to make things really easy. Didn't have to book any venues or anything like that. I just wore white and he wore white as well. She then processed all those documentation. I think she submits things to the registry and all that stuff to confirm that we got legally married. And then she recommended us to go to the registry to get our marriage certificate. So all you have to do is request for your marriage certificate. Vital statistics will then give you that in the mail, I think 2 to 3 weeks after. And so that's the third documentation that you need in this package. The fourth documentation that you need is your confirmation certificates. So I would say that this one is probably the easiest one to obtain, because all you have to do is reach out to your parish that you got your confirmation in. Thankfully, we both did this in Canada, so it was really easy to get. And this doesn't have to have a current date on it. Actually, essentially, if you have your confirmation certificate records with you already, you don't necessarily have to reach out to your parish to get them again, because they will accept the original confirmation certificate. Once you have those 4 different documentation in place, you will then speak with your priest, your local parish, and they will go through the whole marriage transfer. This process, you actually had to meet up in person, I guess, like confirming your identity. And then you also have to fill out a form. They ask about a little bit information about your parents, where they were born, what was their last names, whatever. And then there's a few questions about your religious practices, ensuring that this is not a forced marriage, if it's a healthy relationship, what are things that you would bring into your marriage going forward. And then he will process all those hard copies of the 4 different documentation that you got, and then the forms that you were just filling out. And that whole documentation is going to be sent off to the bishop, so that he can then also approve the whole marriage transfer. You will get, in the end of this, is that you'll have to pick it up, not at the local parish, but I think at like the commissioner, or I don't know, it was this office in downtown Calgary where I picked it up. But essentially I got 2 folders. One I kept enclosed, because this is going to be the hard copies that you have to send off to the Mexico church. And then there was one other copy that I got, and I was able to open this, just make sure all the contents and stuff were in there. And then I also kept it for my records if I needed it during the time of the actual wedding date. What I did with that enclosed folder was I had to send this hard copy down to the Mexico parish by snail mail. So I had to do this with a confirmed courier. I went with Perlator, and then you have like a tracking on it, making sure that it actually gets to the Mexico parish. They then review, and then they'll give you a stamp of approval to say that all the documentation has been processed and you are all set to go to have your marriage of sacrament down in Mexico. Essentially, I mean, the process is pretty easy in essence, but the timeline of things does take some time to get you through all of those processes and get all the documents in place in order for you to actually have a ceremony down in Mexico. If you guys have any questions about that, just leave it in the comment section below and I'll be sure to answer them right away. But yeah, I hope this shed some light on what you should be thinking about leading up to your destination wedding, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!